Supertalk 94.1 FM and AM 930 present the First Century Bank Insider Sports Line, delivered by the staff of the Herd Insider magazine. Online at GoHerd.com. To join us, call 304-399-8255 or toll free at 877-420-8255. Broadcasting from the Supertalk 94.1 FM and AM 930 studio in downtown Huntington, here's Woody Woodrum and Paul Swan.
Welcome in Insider Sports Line. Paul Swan, Woody Woodrum joining you. Our phone numbers this hour, 304-399-8255. You can join us toll free at 877-420-8255. It's been a very interesting day. We have got a lot of feedback on a column that was written in the Parthenon by Henry Culvyhouse, and he joins the studio now. Henry, appreciate it. Thanks for coming in today.
Thanks for having me on.
A lot of people are talking about this column. A lot of people are upset. What were you thinking when you wrote this?
Well, I'd say the reason why a lot of people are upset is some very imprecise language on my part.
Okay.
This is a very delicate matter, and the overall gist of what I wrote here, I can sum up in a couple sentences, which is, let's instead look toward the future of this university, not in the lens of grief, but with the optimism of an institution who is looking for bountiful success. What I was basically trying to say is as time goes on, this tradition, like most traditions, will, the meaning will kind of dull, for people, you know what I mean? Especially for people that weren't affected by, the crash.
Okay.
However, in, touching such a very, touchy subject, a horrible tragedy, I should have used a scalpel, and I accidentally used a hammer when I thought I was using a scalpel,
right,
so to speak. It was very imprecise language, and I'd like to point out this imprecise language to any of the audience who may have not had a chance to read this, and for the many who did. First and foremost, at the beginning, I had a disclaimer in which I said, finally, I want to make an important point to note that the vast majority of this column is directed at the student body and is in no way, shape, or form directed at Marshall University's alumni or the Huntington community. This sentence was very imprecise on my part because I should have also put in the descendants of those who lost their lives. I should have put, the families, and I neglected to do that, and that was a complete and utter failure for precision on my part.
Well, while you're clearing up some points here, let me ask you, I've got a screen grab of a internet meme that's been going around this is from your Facebook page.
Yes, sir.
And it's actually making fun of the Marshall University situation. It's a meme about why Marshall doesn't have an aviation class, and it's taking shots. So this is the worst sports tragedy ever. 75 people died. Do you think the Marshall plane crash is funny?
Well, first and foremost, I'd like to say that I had shared this meme on in February.
Okay.
February 2012. My friend Josh Aaron McDonald, who was a local comedian in the area, was the one that came up with it.
Okay, so but you shared it.
I did share it.
That kind of seems like almost endorsement.
I have a question. How many times have you been to a comedy club, say when the Funny Bone is open, and you may have heard a Holocaust joke?
Not many times.
I mean, but you'll hear it. You'll hear it. I mean, if you go to clubs around the country, you'll hear jokes that are taking shots at tons of things we don't want to talk about in this country.
Yeah, but
you'll hear that, and that was, I get, that's just one of those kind of things.
You're going to be a journalist.
You cannot separate, that and say it's a joke, because no one at this school finds it the least bit amusing, and that's your target audience in a Parthenon. And you can't separate the current student body from people like me that have been in a program for 40 years. I mean, it was god awful in the 70s to live after this crash. People in the Charleston papers by 1980 saying they ought to kill the football program. They're throwing good money after bad. They're throwing money down a rat hole. Let's face it, Marshall's never going to be good. National magazines, will the tragedy ever end at Marshall? Well, you know what? It did end, and finally ended. And I honestly thought we were past articles like this, because there were times in the past I wasn't sure that everyone at Marshall was on board with this, where they tried to distance themselves. But you know what changed that was winning. And then time has been a big factor, and I think that's the one thing you miscalculated on 42 years, because it wasn't till the 30th anniversary that a lot of people even could come for the first time because of the Ashes to Glory documentary. And then in 2006, there's the movie We Are Marshall, and while they took some liberties with the story, it made more people come for the first time. And now, last year, the Letterman's mother came for the first time because she'd never been able to do it on the 41st anniversary. And there were people there yesterday, I'm sure, who were there for the first time. Chuck Landon, a very good friend of mine, had 6 guys die on his Holderby Hall floor. Had not been there until the 30th anniversary because he couldn't face it. The story about going to the cemetery, I've known members of Young Thundering Herd since 1975 who never told me that story, that they went to the cemetery before every game because it was something for the team. Now, I mean, I know you were trying to say maybe the university needs to put this behind them, but to take one day a year where it's memorialized, it is not much, and you know, it's something that people who have been in the program, and I've been there for nearly 40 years now. You know, when my brothers were on a flight and I was driving the equipment truck, I thought about John Hagan, who drove on Friday the 13th because he was afraid of flying, and everybody he knew died on that plane in the athletic department of the football team. And on Monday, he had 37 bags to unpack of equipment, and there was nobody going to come pick up their personal items.
Yeah, Mickey Johnson was on this program yesterday. Mickey Johnson was not on that plane because he was scouting. And if he wasn't scouting, he'd be dead. And he just remembers that every day. And to talk about the Lattermans, you wrote here, as the years pass, it loses its power. Did you talk to Mo Latterman yesterday? Mo Latterman is here because of that ceremony and the power that it had to help him heal. Did you talk to him about the power of this ceremony?
As I said, in this imprecise language I was speaking of.
Well, the imprecise language, nothing. You said it loses its power. The imprecise language is here. You're correcting this.
Well, I guess this is Journalism 101. Once you put it into print, you know, we can say things on here that somebody might remember for a while. And if they have enough ingenuity, they go back and they pull up a podcast and say, remember when Woody said that dumb thing?
Yeah, exactly.
But, you know, when you write something, especially this day and age. I mean, I was at the Parthenon when we got word processors. You write it, you put it into ink, it's there forever. And the response on Facebook against your piece, and I know you probably had good intentions when you wrote it, but the response against your piece is like nothing I have ever seen the Marshall community rally around, including winning championships and going to bowls and national championships and all that. I have never seen such an outpouring. I mean, my 76-year-old mother wants to come down and teach you a lesson. You know, it's just, I can't believe the amount of people that I have seen across the country who are flabbergasted by your column.
Me either, sir. Me.
Let me ask you this. You said that the ceremony is a long-standing tradition at Marshall, but you then compared it to Mountaineers burning couches. Yale has the skull and crossbones, and Marshall has the crest. So are you meaning to tell me that you equate 75 people being memorialized and remembered and celebrated to West Virginia University Mountaineer fans burning a stupid couch? Do you mean to tell me that you have can you justify that correlation?
Well, I wanted to get through all of my imprecise language before we'd start vetting these questions, but I mean, I was going to get to that. That was an insanely sophomoric. I don't even know why I should.
Well, why did you?
What?
You say sophomoric. You know better, right?
It was very sophomoric, and I should have known better.
Why did I?
Because I was trying to show how universities each have a tradition, and this is just our tradition. Now, if you look at the paragraph above here...
But you're saying our tradition equals a Mountaineers burning couch. I mean, you have married the two, a beautiful ceremony to a couch burning.
In this sentence, I have married the two. Now, I have a question. Did you happen to read the paragraph above it, or I happen to start marrying it to other national tragedies, such as OK?
It doesn't matter. You married it to JFK, 9/11. You married it to a Mountaineer couch burning.
But I was in the second grade when JFK died. I remember sitting in a classroom. He's dead. No, he's not, because the news was a lot more imprecise. And we cried great tears, and I remember where I was to that day. I remember where I was for 9/11. I remember where I was for Oklahoma City, for the Challenger disaster. And I don't think anything of remembering those, and think that anything is less. I mean, I saw the History Channel rerun the entire special on the attack all day. They ran that thing basically commercial free, and they ran it all day. So, I mean, you talk to a Japanese or an American veteran who was at Pearl Harbor.
I understand,
my
sir.
God, those guys are never going to forget that. They've even forgiven. But you can forgive and never forget.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I the Southern Airways flight was the least of the problem. The airport didn't have any runway radar or anything. It was raining. It was a terrible situation. And Ernie Salvatore said it best. The rest of the state didn't pay attention to Marshall being a university down here until they had a plane crash. And that's a shame. But, you just took something that is still 42 years. It's still too fresh. I mean, my son went to school and was taught by Courtney Proctor and Debbie Chambers Morehouse, who lost both parents. She's married to Keith, who lost one parent. And their kids know this story. And my son went with me last year for the first time at 13, so I could make him understand it. And I mean, quite frankly, truly, my family is. They were devastated by this.
I understand, sir. That's why I said this article was not directed at the Marshall alumni or the Huntington community.
I know, but you cannot separate one from the other.
I
hope you've learned that.
Yeah, when you write something, your audience is who reads this. So you're basically saying, hey, if you're a Marshall alum, you're a Marshall, you have someone in that claim class, don't read this. Is that what you're saying?
Well, no. What I'm saying is my comments are not directed towards them. That's what I am saying here.
But they're offended.
I'm sorry they're offended. I did not mean to offend. I did not mean to offend these people. I did not mean to at all.
Affected by this plane crash directly are offended. And you talk about in here this tradition, this ceremony has become devoid of meaning. Are you sure? Did you really think it through? This has become devoid of meaning? Have you seen the response to you? People think you're a clown, think you're an idiot right now. They don't think you have credibility. The Facebook posting alone gives you no credibility.
I came here to clear up the air about this. I didn't come here to give John.
Our phone number is 304-399-8255. Toll free, 877-420-8255. First Century Bank.